7 years ago, middle of the day in Newport News, Virginia, and someone starts shooting.
911. Three shots. He shot this boy.
When local police arrived at the scene, they found two young victims. A 20-year-old was laying near death on the front porch. He'd die later at the hospital. A 16-year-old was already dead, behind the house, face down in the grass. But police couldn't find any leads, no witnesses, no weapon, so a double murder investigation went nowhere. But 4 years later, a new detective named Carlos Nunez was assigned to the case, and he got a tip that a local rapper named Antwain Steward, seen here in this video, was the shooter, and that Steward, who uses the stage name Twain Gotti, had actually written a rap song bragging about the murder. At the time, Steward was an up-and-coming young rapper who had a conviction for gun possession. Steward produces what some call gangster rap, his lyrics overwhelmingly focused on violence and drug dealing and gang life. One song caught the detective's eye. When Nunez heard it, he believed Steward was bragging about the murder. Listen.
Walk to your boy and I approached him 12 midnight on the traphouse porch. Everybody saw when I choked him, but nobody saw when I smoked him, roast him, chopping up the shank, then I poked him. 357 Smith & Wesson being scoped him, broke them.
Some of the details match. The shooting happened on a porch. No witnesses immediately came forward. But others don't. The time of day is wrong, there wasn't a stabbing, the caliber of the gun is wrong, and there's only one victim mentioned, not two. But more importantly, is this evidence of anything? Is it just a song, or is it a confession? Based largely on that rap, and on the accounts of two witnesses given years after the shooting, the rapper was arrested and charged with double murder. Steward claims he's innocent. He's been in jail since the time of his arrest. During his initial interrogation, the detective zeroed in on Steward's rap lyrics.
It's a rap song that you sang way back then where they say, everybody saw me when I choking, but nobody saw me when I smoke.
What did that got to do with any murder that you just threw at me?
In the trap house and the porch. 357 scope.
What do that got to do with anything?
You describe the murder. Talk about the murder.
Listen,
when I was in interrogation, that's the first thing he threw at me. The detective threw that at me. He's saying, you know, I got every song you ever made, but I ain't know nothing he was talking about.
So you had nothing to do with the killing of those two men?
Nothing at all. I don't know nothing about it.
James Ellenson is Steward's lawyer.
It seemed like the rap lyrics sort of formed the basis as their investigatory tool as to why they started thinking that maybe it was Antwain Steward that had committed this double murder.
Though the lyrics were central in building this case, they were cited in an affidavit, in the interrogation, and in a pretrial hearing, the prosecutor ultimately decided not to play them for the jury. But in many other cases nationwide, rap lyrics are playing an increasingly prominent role in criminal cases.
When something occurs in that video and that rap matches the crime, it's going to be real hard in a criminal court to try to attempt on behalf of the defense to exclude it.
David Laban is a former gang prosecutor. He's now the CEO of the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys.
On behalf of prosecutors, if it's matching, that would very much be another piece of evidence that we would like to admit in the case because we think it is relevant.
I can tell you that it's in the hundreds.
Hundreds of instances.
Hundreds of instances where rap lyrics are being used at some point in the criminal justice process.
Eric Nielsen of the University of Richmond is a scholar of rap and a strong critic of its use in criminal proceedings. He says it too often mistakes a musical art form for evidence of criminal behavior.
I mean, what prosecutors have found is that when they can introduce rap lyrics as evidence, particularly in situations where they don't have strong evidence otherwise, they are still able to secure convictions.
No one tracks exactly how often rap lyrics are used to secure convictions in court, just as no one keeps track of how often they're used to secure plea bargains before trial. And there are no hard and fast rules about using them in court. A judge has to weigh a lyric's relevance versus its potential to unfairly prejudice a jury. There are some cases, like Dennis Green's, where the connection between a rap and a crime is clear. In 2003, Green brutally killed his wife and then rapped specifically about committing the murder. The lyrics were introduced at trial and he was sentenced to life in prison. But other cases aren't as clear-cut.
3 specific words are what prosecutors hope will link Torrance Hatch to the alleged killing of...
2 years ago in Louisiana, a rapper named Terrence Hatch, known as Lil Boosie, was tried for first-degree murder. Prosecutors argued that a few cryptic words of one rap song were in fact a confession. Hatch was found not guilty. But one of the most controversial uses of rap lyrics in a trial was the case of Vontae Skinner. Skinner was convicted in 2008 of shooting a fellow drug dealer outside this New Jersey house. During his trial, prosecutors read 13 pages of Skinner's violent, graphic rap lyrics. These were lyrics that had been written months and years before the shooting. Prosecutors read them to show Skinner's alleged propensity for violence. But his conviction was overturned by an appellate court, which ruled the extensive readings unfairly prejudiced the jury. The state Supreme Court is now weighing whether Skinner deserves a new trial. To critics like Eric Nielsen, prosecutors rarely, if ever, should use rap as evidence in court. He says it's an art form that intentionally uses elaborate wordplay and exaggeration. And while it may often contain graphic violence, Nielsen argues that's a reflection of the communities where many young black men live. He says rappers are creating characters, not writing diaries.
That is the most important distinction that constantly gets missed, is that there is an author and a narrator. We seem to be able to grasp that concept with every other art form that uses the first-person narrative. But rappers who go the extra mile to signal that they are inventing a narrator with their use of a stage name, we still revert back to this idea that they're the same, that we conflate the two.
So you don't buy the argument that this is all fiction. You believe that if they are rapping about a violent, crime-ridden life, that does tell you something about the artists themselves.
Absolutely. I would say you can't have it both ways. You cannot say that I'm rapping about stuff because this is what I live in and this is what I see every day, and then come into court and say everything that I said in that rap is completely untrue.
So if that song is just a story, a made-up story, why do you write a story like that? Why are you telling that story?
That's my lane. I'm in the lane of hardcore rap. That's just what it is. Like I said, I gotta keep building my brand until I get to where I wanna be. I found something that I'm talented at and found a way to make money off of it.
Antwain Steward says, like it or not, gangster rap is what sells. And the violent, gang-ridden streets where he grew up gave him plenty to rap about.
It's everyday life where I'm from. It just goes on. Like, you walk down the street, you might see a needle that was used for dope laying on the ground, you know what I mean? You grew up in that environment your whole life. It's not hard, it just comes naturally, you feel me?
I think it becomes even easier to sort of negate rap as art when the rap itself is projecting stereotypes of criminality about particularly young black men in the United States. And so I think prosecutors have a very powerful tactic, and one of the things that's most powerful about it is that it allows them to play upon, but unfortunately also perpetuate those enduring stereotypes.
What about the argument that the content of some kinds of rap music is so violent that if you put that in front of a jury, that if the prosecution says, this guy raps like this and we think he's guilty of X, that the jury will believe anything?
I don't think that matches reality of what happens in a courtroom. We must get a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And playing a rap is not going to convict somebody. If it was, then you'd have rap being played every day and we wouldn't even need to worry about producing other evidence.
Antwain Steward's double murder trial lasted 3 days. With no mention of his lyrics by the prosecution, the case hung on those 2 eyewitnesses who identified him 4 years after the fatal shootings. The jury found Steward not guilty of either murder, but guilty on a related weapons charge. He'll be sentenced later this month. In the meantime, Steward says his arrest and the publicity around it has driven up downloads and YouTube views of his songs.